Ready for higher increments this year as AON survey sees a 9.7% average salary hike for employees across different sectors, a little higher than last year's 9.5%. Expect a higher pay hike as companies are focusing more on performance and productivity. We caught up with Ananda Ghosh, who is the partner of talent and rewards of the AON Hewitt Consulting, who gives us an insight on the positive economic outlook. Listen in.
If you look at it, the last few years, we've been saying that pay increments have been in the sub 10, 9.5, 9.6, that kind of a zone. The large reason for why it is this way is because there is very little attrition happening. Attrition levels have come down, and attrition levels comes down primarily because there are, to your point, not enough new jobs being created around which you're going to see this attrition. So yeah, I think I would argue that one of the main reasons for why salary increases tend to be low and have remained low is because of the fact that there aren't enough sufficient number of new jobs being created.
So now if I could look back at it, for the last couple of years when I've been interviewing AON, ever since they come out with the salary increment, it's always the consumer internet companies as well as life sciences that manage to get the highest increment. That is still the same, but clearly it's a much smaller increment. Is that because of what you're saying that because of the lack of jobs?
You see, basically what was happening was, till a few years ago, when consumer internet first came in, there was a huge increase. Like they used to give offers of 16-17% pay increases, etc. Life sciences was 12, 13, 14%, etc. Over the period of time, two things happened. One is obviously the sectors themselves slowed down a little bit. You've seen what happened to pharma companies and life science companies and so on, and that's come down quite a bit in the last. That industry has struggled a fair bit in the last few years, and that's had an impact. The second thing that's happened is in consumer internet space, you've seen a very significant impact of the last few years of slowing down in terms of new investments and so on. And that's again created lack of salary growth in that sector. We used to say this some time ago, that every industry goes through a maturity cycle. Telecom used to have huge increases at one point in time, and then they went through a maturity cycle. Consumer internet had huge increases, now it's the maturity cycle. And it's the same thing that's happening now for these industries. And we don't expect these industries to start going back to those earlier levels that you were seeing in 2015 or 14, etc.
So that's certainly not good news, but is that only because the economy is not picking up?
It's a bit difficult to say. So why are salary increases low? Like I said, one argument is very clearly because of the fact that attrition is less, so why give larger increases? People are not leaving. The second argument is that there is, in the last 5 years, if you track BSE 500 companies, the average growth, the revenue growth, is less than the average growth of compensation costs. Okay. Now that is clearly not sustainable from a company perspective. So therefore, people are trying to see how much they can reduce this comp cost growth. The third thing
but from what you're telling me, forget salary hikes. We might be heading towards restructuring. Most of these a lot of these BSE 500 companies are looking at restructuring from what you're saying.
Absolutely. So on the attrition point again, there is the data says that in the last 5 years, the involuntary attrition, which is when people are forced to go, has increased significantly from about 3% to almost 4% of the employee population, and that's a pretty large change. That's about a 33% increase in the volume of involuntary attrition that companies are seeing, and that's to your point. That's a part of the restructuring that companies are doing.